A lot of the players in the world are not as good as we think they are. There's an entitlement that just because I am here, I will get the players. I need to get the players. The club must buy me the players without showing anything. We don't. There's no South African coaches in the Champions League currently right now. Welcome everybody to the George Mokoena podcast. My name is George Mokoena. I am your host, and this is a place where we really sit down and I take you through some of the articles and stories that I've seen, and I give you a little bit of my opinions of what is happening, and hopefully sparks a conversation that we can have in the comments and on the live show when we are back. I'm hoping that you guys have had an incredible Christmas period and a great festive overall, and this will be the last one of the year, but I hope you guys are having a great time with your families, and I hope that we'll all come back refreshed to come speak about the football. So let's get straight into it. The first thing I want to speak about is Coach Vusumuzi Vilakazi, coach of Amazulu, co-head coach of Amazulu, has come out after their loss versus the Mamelodi Sundowns, and he's spoken about how South African players lack concentration, especially within the critical phases. If you know anything about Coach Vusumuzi Vilakazi, when he was coaching Richards Bay, a lot of what he'd bemoan was the last parts of games where players would not quite be there. And if you're not quite sure what a critical phase is, the critical phases within a game are usually the first 5 to 10 minutes of the game, the 5 to 10 minutes before halftime, the 5 to 10 minutes after halftime, and the 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the game. You could also argue that a critical phase is after you've conceded or after you've scored, those first few minutes after that, because in those times it's very easy to lose concentration. You start a game and you're not quite there. You're still warming into the game, but one goal easy. You think about the Pirates scoring in the first 30 seconds versus the Marawa Gallants in the game that was played last week, right? You think about right before halftime. You've had a big half, or you've had a good half, or you've had a tough half, and you're just thinking at the last 5 to 10 minutes that I just need to get to halftime. Your head is in the change room and you get hit. Similar situation as with when you come back from the halftime break, and similar situation towards the end of the game. Now after scoring also, there's that thing, Yoguti, you guys are still happy, you're still high, you may still be in the feelings of scoring, and then somebody scores, or if you've conceded, sometimes they tend to cascade and you concede one and then now you've conceded two more on top because you're still dazed, confused about what happened. Those are critical phases. And while I hear him, because that is a very important thing, this is a chance for us to have a bigger conversation about South African players in general. And I want to have this conversation from two lenses. There was an interview on idiskitv where Umunyane was speaking about Ibafana Bafana playing France, the 5-0 match where France beat us 5-0. And I want to speak to players taking things serious. In that interview, he goes on to say that, they played against France, and one of the things that shocked him was how direct the players were, but how the movements of the players, it seemed like, they were dictated by something else. They were so zoned in, they were tactical. So he'd say that Mbappe comes into my zone. When I follow Mbappe makes a run purposefully here. I follow Mbappe, in comes Griezmann takes the spot. Now, I've left my space because I'm chasing this one, and you can tell it's a plan. When you go back to him, he leaves, and then Mbappe is now the main guy again. And he spoke about a lot of the technical parts and the tactical parts of the game where, you are doing things for a purpose. I've often said on the show, that our players, if you were to pause a game in the middle of the game, and you were to pause it and you looked at everybody and you asked everyone to just stand exactly where they are, and you asked them, why did you make that move? Why did you go there? Why are you running there? Where's your next pass going to be? Why would you make that pass? You who's making a run, why are you running into that space? If you were to ask them to break down what they do, you would probably find that a lot of the game is a thoughtless thing where they're just playing. A lot of the game is them making up things on the fly. And maybe the difference between our players, even in Africa, and in comparison to the world, is that those guys understand why and how and when I am doing this, why I'm moving like this, why I'm making this run, why I'm looking that way, why. They understand those little things. And Tina, we leave the players to be the ones to come up with everything. You know, I hear this conversation, we speak about quality players all the time. And I believe that our problem is we genuinely believe in our heads that all of these players are always mindful in the game, hyper football intelligence wise, can be trusted to make decisions. And the truth is that a lot of players in the world, I don't want to make it about a PSL thing, a lot of the players in the world are not as good as we think they are, and there's a lot of heavy lifting that's done by coaching. I'll get into coaching in the second part of this podcast, but I think our players need to start taking those things seriously. I used to read about Sokala Tuma and all those things, and you'd watch the players you'd read about the players in the interviews, and they'd tell you about my favorite player is Messi, my favorite player is Ronaldo, my favorite player is Xavi. Why is he your favorite player? Oh, it's the way that he thinks, it's the way he does. Meanwhile, you are also a professional. You are also a professional who's supposed to be thinking about this. You know, I'd be pressed to find out. I really want to find out how many players do their own post-match analysis of the mistakes that they made or the good things that they did. I wonder if they do those things in depth by themselves. You know, I often point to the NFL and the NBA, and I speak about some of those players. Again, 90% of those leagues also have they're not special players. There's a couple of special players, but anyway, when you read about those guys, they've got out of season coaches. So in the off season, they come out and they've got their coaches that they've brought in a guy who's a specialist in shooting and movement as a shooter in the NBA. And I do drills and I learn and I change my shot and I do this and I do that. How many of our players have those type of things? Where maybe you call Coach Benny and you say, Coach Benny, I need to improve my striking. Can I work with you in the off season? Some of them go even to the point, those players overseas, some of them go even to the point where those coaches that they've hired and they pay are part of their actual practices. So umuntu chimane team, when they're done chimane team, bangena nalo, their own coaches. You think about a Steph Curry, he's got two of his own coaches that he does shooting drills with, that teach him, okay, how do you shoot when this guy is here? Do we have those type of things over and above the development was meant to be made? I had a conversation about that previously, but do our players take it seriously enough to understand the game to that level, even on their own? To know that, guys, we are entering a critical phase. How many of our players know what time it is during games? In the games where there's no scoreboards, you think about an old Peter Mokaba stadium that maybe, I'm not sure, but I don't believe they have a scoreboard with the time. How many understand, okay, now we're moving into here, Gunzima, Kshubile, maybe now we need to defend a little bit like this. Talking on the pitch, do they talk, do they do? There's so many questions that I have about the players, and I think it plays out in the lack of concentration. It plays out in losing games in critical phases. It plays out in decision making in the box when we get there, when we play. And maybe we give our players a little bit too much credit in terms of thinking that they are as good. But then when they get to play against the really good teams around the world, or the really good players, and you can have a conversation like Umunyan, and it's not to say he's a bad player. I don't want to say he's a bad player. I don't want to say any of that stuff. But a professional who's been playing football for a while, top level. At the time, I believe he was a Pirates player, top level. It's Orlando Pirates. Facilities, resources, all of those things are down. To have that player come out and say, I went out versus Abombape, and they just blew my mind with their movement. They just blew my mind with their thinking. They just blew my mind. It kind of scares me. And you see it sometimes play out when they meet the big teams. When Bafana plays a really big team, you're like, oh, yeah, we see the difference. And I don't think it's that much of a quality difference. I think it's that much of a study difference. How much time are you giving yourself to get better? Are you doing the extra work? Are you studying? Are you taking this thing seriously? But it leads me to the second part of the conversation.
Sorry to interrupt the video that I'm sure you're enjoying, but I just wanted to say thank you for all of the support that you guys have shown me and my Overthinking Football platform. I'm a one-man band that's doing all of this, and I really do enjoy the comments about how, you know, Supersport needs to come fetch me and SABC and all of that stuff. And I think it speaks to the quality of the content, but also the amount of effort that I put in. So I just wanted to say thank you. But the truth is that Abu Supersport and all of those guys, yes, we're competing with them, but it's a completely different place. The sponsors are looking for former players, and to be honest with you, running some of these things is getting so difficult, and things have changed at home. So financially, it's a whole different world. So I wanted to try something new and come to the overthinkers, the people who watch the content, and say it would be incredible if you guys could contribute monthly towards the platform, towards keeping my lights on, but also making sure that all of the crazy things that I want to do, that I want to take Supersport on with, I can actually do. And just for 20 Rand every month, I think that would be an incredible contribution if you can make it. It may sound like a little, but if we can get a lot of people behind it, then we'll be able to carry on doing what I do. I'll be able to carry on giving you the content and also expanding it, because we don't have shows like this, and us content creators need help from our audiences. So I just came here to ask you if you can. Here is the account number that you guys can use in order to contribute. And I think, yeah, I'd be very grateful if you would. But anyway, let's get back to the video. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And this comes from an interview that I had with the Coach Kanu. I'll put the links up here somewhere. I had an interview with the Coach Kanu. And Coach Kanu was speaking about how he was coaching Richards Bay at the time. They were obviously in a relegation battle. And he said sometimes he wonders if the players are aware situationally that the club situation overall is you guys are in the relegation zone. And maybe now you can't go out and party the day after. You can't go out and have poor practices. You can't go out and play half and half when you're going to go play these games that are coming in. You have to be locked in and try save your jobs. He was lamenting the fact that some of these players may not even care that they're in a relegation fight. And this is the second awareness I want to speak about, because I think this is the one that follows our league. I've often said that Mamelodi Sundowns is the most focused team. They don't take games for granted. They don't take days for granted, trainings for granted. They don't take anything for granted. They've created an environment where if you're a player and you sleep, someone will replace you. And we're going to buy somebody that's better than you. So already competitively, the players have to be here. We've heard about the bonus schemes, where a lot of your money that comes in, or the extra cream money, is bonuses. So you have to go out and win games and win trophies. That's how you become a supremely rich player, or you become those things, because you're winning the trophies, the bonuses add up, and then chigi, your salary is very high. Mentality already there. They've created an environment that is a high performance environment, that is highly competitive, that Sundowns wants to do big things. And you see it in the everyday. You see it in the everyday. And most teams don't have environments that are like that. And you start seeing it play out. The fact that Mamelodi Sundowns has opened the gap over and over and over again, bigger and bigger and bigger, season upon season upon season. They've been opening and widening the gap in the league. Widening the gap between them and the other South African teams on the African continent, and how we think about it. Situational awareness to know that, guys, we're fighting relegation. We need 8 points from the next 12 in order to save this thing. We need to play out of our skins. You watch how comfortable some of the players are playing. I'm going to point to Richards Bay. You watch how comfortable some of those players are, knowing that last season they finished the season at number 15. But now they're heading into another season where they're at number 15 and you don't see an urgency. You don't see a want to go fight. You watch teams that have been number 15, 14, and you're like, guys, you've been hovering above the relegation zone for the past X amount of months. When are you guys going to wake up and say, yo guys, oh, not months, years, X amount of years? At what point do you wake up and say, but guys, we cannot be here. We need to move out of this zone. Do our players take the club situation seriously? Guys, we are in number 9. We're trying to get to top 8. We're in number 4. We're trying to get to number 3. Or number 5, you're trying to get to number 4 or number 3 so that you can play confed football. You're trying to get to number 2, number 1 so that you can try and play. If you look at the Stellenbosch last season, everything was in their favor to play Champions League. That would have changed a lot for Stellenbosch. Or at least somewhat in the way that they run the model of the team. They couldn't finish it off at the end of the day. Pirates came back to sneak in. How do we make sure that our players understand what's at stake? Understand what's really crazy is, especially with the relegation, guys, relegation changes everything. Look at Cape Town Spurs. Your coach got fired. You weren't winning. I think it was one of the worst records we've seen in the PSL. Now they're struggling in the NFT. It's not as easy to bounce back up. And had some of those players taken it as seriously during that time, given a little bit more of a performance during that time, maybe that team is not there. So I think something we need to talk about in football is in-game concentration, in-game awareness, number 1. And then number 2, we need to speak about club context. But the players aren't the only people here that you could point at. I've had some interesting conversations over the past few days, especially with my coach Nasreddin Nabi. And I want to preface this by saying that this is not a conversation about him losing his job. It's not a conversation about putting coaches under pressure and doing all that stuff. I just want to speak about what coaching is in the modern game. You know, coaching has changed for me. Coaching for me used to be a job where you had to come in and figure things out and make plans. Coaching was, you are in the job, the transfer window's closed, these are the players you have, can you make a plan with these players that you have? Can you create a system? Can you look at these players where everybody's calling, is this, is that, they're not this, they're not that. Can you sit down and say, okay, how do I make the game easier for these players? That's what coaching was to me. And what is happening, and again, it's not just Coach Nabi, there's a lot of coaches around the world. What is happening is that it feels like now, coaches, this modern football has made coaches into people that need every single thing to be perfect before they move forward. They need every player to be quality. They need every player to be a thinker. They need all of the top players. You need every single thing, every advantage. You need the team to spend 150 million every transfer window. You need everything to be working into your favor for us to then ask you to first start coaching, to then ask you to first start getting some results. And I'm using Coach Nabi as an example because Coach Nabi is one of many coaches that are maybe going through this phenomenon. And I'll speak to maybe why a bit later in the convo. But guys, there's this myth that, number 1, you have to play a specific type of football. You have to use a 4-3-3 with an inverting left back and have a CDM that can do 1, 2, and 3, and then have liberos and registas, and then have all of these things. You have to. That is the sole way to play. whether you've got the players to do it, whether you don't have the players. You must make that player who's not Messi, you must make him into Messi. But the truth of the matter is that the mavericks of our football, most of the time, are just solving the clubs the problems within their clubs. The progression of football doesn't necessarily come from everybody sitting down and saying, this is where we're going. It comes from sometimes coaches that are just going, these are the problems I have at my club, or these are the type of players that I have. I always use Philip Lahm as an example. Pep gets to Bayern and he goes, hi man. Khona lentwana man lapha Philip Lahm, he's playing right back, mara he's got all of the attributes to be able to go and play in the middle. How about when you're defending, we go into a 4, but when we're attacking, I bring him into the middle so that we can overload the middle. And I can use some of those strengths to help those midfielders out when we build up the ball. He didn't go, this is where football is moving. And I think that's one of the things that our coaches are lacking. This is your team. This guy will never be the guy that you want or the top guy that can do those things. There's also this falsehood, the second part, this falsehood that comes with modern football where every coach believes that the team is going to make 15, 20, 23 changes to a team for you in your first season. That every team, guys, it's only a handful of teams, again, in world football that are able to give you everything that you want, that are able to spend at the level that every coach would love to spend. There's a reason why Pep is coaching Man City and not coaching another team. He understood that going to that team's going to give me the superstars that I need. When I snap, they're going to go out and buy the players that I'm asking for. You get me? So these other coaches walking around thinking that, no, I deserve. That's another thing. There's an entitlement that just because I am here, I will get the players. I need to get the players. The club must buy me the players without showing anything. Without proving to us that, okay, you're cooking something. Like we watch some of our teams, we don't even know what the coach is trying to play, but yet they're telling us about players. Not as fans, when you're sitting down and you're talking about these players, we are dreaming up these systems. We're dreaming up these systems and we're thinking about, no, Yazimina, we need a player that does this. Look at what Kutsia is doing at Sundowns. Look at what Debs is doing. Look at what Williams can do playing out what. You don't even know if your team can play that. You don't even know if your team can go and sign that player should they need that player. So I personally need coaches to go back to coaching. Because the other part is you buy all these players for the coach. You bring in the system of the coach. You change everything for the coach. A coach doesn't perform and they're gone the following year. And now a new coach comes in and he goes, wow, there's 15 players here that I don't want. But that's 15 contracts. All because we can't, people say patience, but you have to earn the patience. We can't go, hey, and for some of us, we're realistic. Everybody was talking about Nabi winning things and doing whatever. I don't think he'll come in and do all of that stuff. All I needed him to do was to come in, stabilize the ship, get us to, at the very least, where Atazwani had gotten us, number 5. Then we can go from there. Because the other fallacy, and now I'm speaking to fans, is we've created this culture where we feel like quick fixes will do everything. You'll sign one player and that player will change the whole course of the club. You'll sign one coach and that coach immediately right then will change the whole course of the club. And then you go out into the transfer market and you sign everyone only to find out that those players don't fit. We start looking at those players and saying they're not quality. So I think coaching needs to come back. And I want to end off this particular part. I want to end it off by speaking about the underrated guys. The guys who aren't celebrity coaches, but who do the job day in, day out. Right now, the best South African coach on the African continent right now, in terms of his performance, is Fadlu Davids. Fadlu Davids, who probably would not get a job in South Africa. Went to Morocco as an assistant, they won the league with Zimbabwe. Now he's, I think, got 9 consecutive wins with Simba right now in the Tanzanian league, quietly. Did he ask for a full staff? Did he ask for 700 changes? Did he complain and whine about players? Did he do all? No, he arrived and he's doing the job. In our league right now, there's a coach named Phuthi Mohafe. Polokwane City is sitting number 3 on the log right now. Polokwane City may not be Sundowns and Pirates. Sundowns and Pirates are having incredible seasons. But I believe they've got a 6-point gap between them and number 4. A Polokwane City team that was at risk of losing Apolis and Machulidi. A Polokwane team that has Cole Alexander as one of their key players. Remember him, Chief Sense? Cole Alexander. They have Lord Kambala as one of their key players. I know, very, very important player in the history of South African football for a specific reason that I'm not going to get into, but those are the players they're looking to. For everybody who's saying that it's a quality thing and all of that stuff, I give you Polokwane City's team and I put it there and I say, that's your team. Everybody would cry. But Abo Mohafe, Abo Siema are looking at their teams and they're going, this is what I have. There's a very powerful quote that was said by Kevin Hunt on one of Marawa's old shows. I remember Uchunya Khanye was on the show with him. And Uchunya was speaking about Gavin and he was saying that Gavin, you know, he doesn't like Gavin as a coach because Gavin plays boring football and does, boring things. You know, his football is not fun. He doesn't give players room to breathe and all of that stuff. And Gavin actually was one of the guests on that same episode. And he said, I hear what Junior's saying. And he said he'd love to play beautiful football. He'd love to do all of those things. But where he is and with the players that he has to be pragmatic and realistic. How do I set up this team to play to their strengths without complicating things? He's spoken about in the final third, to speak about the previous thing, the previous topic. He's spoken about the final third where he said that, the final third is about here. And sometimes you don't have, there's very few players that are here and there's very few players that you can buy. So if I need to make sure that my winger gets to a spot and crosses the ball, and I tell my 2 guys, I train them, that stand here and here. We saw what Supersport was and the type of changes that has to happen every single season. We saw what his Bidvest Wits team was like that won the league. We saw what his Supersport teams were like that won the league. They weren't beautiful football playing teams, but they came out and they knew what they were doing. And maybe that's where our coaching needs to go also. Maybe Coach Nabi, don't trust your players that they are of the quality. We've spoken first round of this podcast. They're not of the level. So maybe it's time for you to say, guys, I need you to stand here and to go there, and another one stands there, and when you get the ball here, you must make a run there. And maybe you need to start being that deep into it, because to defend Coach Nabi, I don't feel like he's a building coach. I feel like he's the coach that you get after the foundation is set, because the type of players you'll have may be of the quality that can think on their feet and do that stuff and find you spaces and change games. Abu Mshishi. How many Mshishis do we have? Look at Ibafana Bafana. We're struggling because we don't know who Mshishi's replacement is. We're hoping Tito will be that. Who comes after Tito, for example? So maybe now it's time for you to do that. All of the systems in the world Again, going back to my point about the players, these players are not as good as we think they are across the world. A majority of these players are system players. And Pep has a strict system. Thierry Henry once spoke about how he thought, I'm Thierry Henry, I'm a big player, I'm going to get to Barcelona, I'm going to run my own routes and I'm going to make my own stuff because I've earned it. I'm Thierry Henry. But he's like, when we got there, he was like, the Pep system is so strong and set. You don't deviate from that thing. That's how you win. Thierry Henry. You look at Abu Kevin De Bruyne, they play in strict systems. The Mamelodi Sundowns system from last year was a strict system. Do you know why we're looking at Sundowns and saying that they've dropped their level? It's because now the systems that have come in now no longer cover the players. Now you are meant to be a midfielder. The questions that you're asking of Mokoena is because there isn't that cover anymore of having a midfield of 5 people. Kutsie, you, Mudiba, Zwane, Alenda. And all of you are covering for each other. Mshishi, don't worry about defensive duties. Ukutsie and Mokoena are going to cover you if you lose the ball. Nonke, Alenda, Mudiba. Mudiba, I don't need you to be the primary ball handler who brings the ball up. I'm going to let Alenda do that, but you're going to be secondary. I was saying last night that what we're seeing in the PSL is that we've got a lot of secondary players. Players that can play well when there's somebody who's the primary responsibility. So you look at Chiefs, when Sirino's there, because he has the primary responsibility of playing the ball. All of the other guys have to worry about the 1-2, not the thought behind the 1-2. They have to worry about the run inside, not the thought behind playing the pass. And that's why they're struggling. I say of the Chiefs, Abumdu, you cannot fault them for what they give you. They give you everything. Umdu will come off the pitch sweating. But it will be all effort. They'll be busy, but not effective. So now you have to craft the systems that do those things. And the top teams in the world have systems. Liverpool has a system. Real Madrid has a system. As free as Carlo Ancelotti says he plays, he says that for him, his only thing is to get them into defense, but then going forward, he doesn't tell them too much. But you can see there's a system. Vinny runs a certain way. Mbappe is now learning. Jude Bellingham does a thing. Rodrigo does a thing. They now have an understanding between the 3 of them. And there's still a primary person. Vinny's usually the primary person. So coaches, please coach. Please coach. To close this off, please coach. And work with what you have. I will always say, guys, you could want sushi as much as you want. But if all you have is bread, it's either you make a sandwich with what you have, or you cry for the sushi you're not going to have while it's dilapidating. Rather, these new players that we're all crying about walk into a team that is number 5, that has scraped and struggled and fought to number 5. And we've done something, then crying and falling lower and lower in the log. Crying and still playing these players the exact same way. Crying and still expecting them to wake up one day and do something different. If you can run, run. Reina as a Sundowns, coaching. Reina as a Sundowns, when he arrived, he was playing left wing, wide. It wasn't working. Coach Mangoba comes in and he tweaks. And he goes, oh, okay, you'll play as a wide player. It'll be a front 3. But we'll make it a close front 3. It'll almost be a front 2. So the 3 of you will then orientate yourselves to come back, and you'll have Ribeiro and 2. They worked on it, you could see. Avocado also now, you're watching Reina's play centrally, waiting to make runs in behind. They're not asking Reina's to do anything different, or anything higher grade, or anything that's outside of his skill set. And that's the strength of some of these teams. That's why they keep beating us. Polokwane City is not asking Cole Alexander to be Messi, Tony Kroos. They're not asking, they're saying, Tony, you are not Cole Alexander. I need you to be ready defensively to cover Matuludi when he goes up. Matuludi, when you go up, I need the three of you, Apolis and Chauke, to speak. We'll make sure that defensively, Abu Kambala are doing the dirty work to cover and they're sitting back. But when we break here, we're going through you guys. Stellenbosch. We're going to be defensively compact. But when we break, Reyners, I need you to run like this with Van Veek. Now they're even doing it differently. We're going to give it to De Jong. And De Jong, you're going to be the guy who decides the front three guys when they were running. They even changed their system. Coach. Please, can we coach? Now, last part of this that I want to speak about. Guys. I've been nominated at the TikTok Awards Sub-Saharan Africa in the Sports Creator of the Year category. Not bad for a guy who does all of his work from my dining room behind the couch. What also makes this cool is that I primarily cover the PSL. So to everybody who said local football won't get you anywhere, this is where we are now. But these awards need votes to be won. So I need you to go to the link in my profile. Don't worry, it's going to be anywhere you're watching this. If you go to the profile, you will find this link. Click on the Sports Creator of the Year and then click on the Vote Now button next to my picture. That's how you cast a vote. You can vote for me once every single day up until this date and time, the 31st of December at 1 minute to 12. Remember, this is the Sub-Saharan Africa Awards, so it's a chance for me to put a star on my logo, man. Because, well, hi. So my overthinkers, please ask everybody to vote. Everyone who you can, because this is a chance for us to really state that South African football is something really important and can be taken seriously. Help me out. Is speaking on Coach Rulani. Coach Rulani Mokoena, obviously we all know he's coaching at Wydad. He hasn't had a very good time. They've been up and down results. They just recently lost 4-1, which was a very heavy defeat. And there are questions being asked about his time at Morocco. There's a question that's been asked about what he's doing because the team is stopping and starting. And as we know in Morocco, man, they don't have a lot of patience. Patience is not something that they have. So where I want to go with this conversation, it harkens back to what we've been speaking about with the coaching. Coach Rulani is one of the celebrity coaches. Coach Rulani is highlighting the risk and reward of bringing in that coach and giving them everything. I believe Iwita has made 23 changes to players. I believe they made changes to their staff. I believe Coach Rulani was allowed to bring in all of the people that he wanted to bring in there at Wydad. And I think there was a love that was attached to him. We saw how they were reacting and acting when Coach Rulani first arrived. We saw that he was being tracked and he was being kissed, and there were people running after him at practices to take photos, and there was all of that stuff. He was giving the press conferences and everybody was amenable. They loved him and all of that stuff. But you know what happens when you've built yourself up so high? It can change like this. And it goes back to the conversation we were having about the non-superstar coaches. Coach Fadlu is over-delivering and under-promising. Coach Fadlu, I think when he signed with Simba, I don't think they were expecting this. I think they were basically maybe looking at him and going, and he didn't ask too much of them. So now when you look back on it, you go, wow. It's going to look so much better. But now Rulani comes in with this high bar, high level, high asks, high this, high investment, high everything. And he's struggling. And now he's in press conferences talking about his future. Because apparently there's special meetings that are being called. Apparently they've already had one. They had one a couple of weeks ago. They've hired a new technical director at Wydad. Things are looking bad. But what I want to speak about here, especially with Rulani, and I want to use him as an example of maybe how coaches should and shouldn't move. What we forget about Rulani's time, or Rulani going to Wydad, is that there's a lot of challenges that come with that change. Number one, you are leaving your country. So already, your first time outside the country like that, you're leaving your country, you're going into a brand new language, a brand new culture, a brand new everything, and there's a part where you have to adapt. And where I give him credit, he was doing things like calling himself Ashraf Mokoena, learning abo mashallah and all of the things that they say that side, learning the culture and all of that, and he was using it well in the press conferences. So there's a learning curve for that. There's a learning curve for the different kind of football, because you're not seeing Wydad once every year or twice every year like you were seeing them at Sundowns. You're now in that league. So that's the first challenge. Also owing to the fact that you're a different person, you come from a different culture, we know what happens. We know how quickly we call people plumbers here in South Africa when they're foreigners coming in. Now you are the foreigner in that country. You are the plumber. I believe it was one of Fadlu's assistants that spoke to Michael Morton, and he said that, guys, we are the plumbers here. We have to prove ourselves. That's one aspect. The second aspect is you are leaving an environment that was cream. I think Mamelodi Sundowns' environment, like I spoke about previously in the podcast, is cream. It's everything you'd ever want as a coach. It's all of the best people, the best players, the best of everything. On top of the fact that Coach Rulani, by virtue of having been at Mamelodi Sundowns for as long as he was, even leaving and coming back, but for as long as he was, it comes with a certain voice, a certain power that you're not going to have elsewhere. You're not going to be given the benefit of the doubt. You'll be loved, but you're not going to be given the benefit of the doubt as if you are family at Wydad, family at any other club, because Sundowns had a family appeal. So he's dealing with all of that, plus the fact that the club is underperforming. And if we're telling the truth, guys, if we're telling the truth, the moment your club starts underperforming, yes, we may say that we don't have expectations. Yes, we may say that whatever. But if your club was number 6 last year, and you're bringing in a star coach and you're signing all of these people, you're expecting something back. Back to Coach Nabi. When they bring him in, yes, people will say that, we love him, we give you time, we do whatever. I did a video very early on where I said, you need to put together a string of results. It doesn't matter how the results come, but you need to string them together. Or even, how do I put it, space out the losses in a way. Rulani is under pressure because it's the way that these things are happening. Sometimes the bigger picture doesn't matter if you're winning 2, losing 1, and doing all of those things. But you need to do that because at some point they're going to look at you and say, yeah, but when? We've done everything that you wanted. And that is where Coach Rulani is. And part of the conversation that we had on the show, if you guys were with me during the early part of the live shows, when it was announced that Coach Rulani was leaving, one of the conversations I had was he's going to have to pick what type of coach he's going to have to be now that he's leaving Sundowns. He's going to have to pick. Are you a celebrity coach? Celebrity coaches come with massive pressure. Massive pressure. You have to make huge moves. You don't have to win, but you have to make huge moves in your first season. If the team is number 7, it best be number 3 or number 4. If your team is number 9, it best be number 4 in your first season. I speak about earning time. Klopp had to earn his time at Liverpool. First season, I think he finished 4th, if I'm not mistaken. To be fair, they had finished 2nd the year before, but anyway, he finished 4th and got them Champions League. The second year, I think, I'm forgetting when he won it. If it was the 3rd or 2nd year, he won the Champions League. Won the league the following year, or had to go down to the wire with City. Pep, first season, didn't work out that well for him, but he finished, I believe it was number 2 or number 3. Second season, he was like, no, I need to go to the moon. Coach Pitso, people often tell that story half. Coach Pitso saved Sundowns from a relegation type of scare. Second season, he won the league. He had to prove something. He had to show improvement. Coach Jose Rivero won 2 trophies in his first year MTN8 is a very early trophy. He won that very early in order to earn his time. That's the burden of being a celebrity coach. Whereas if you come in as somebody who's unassuming, and you come in without the fanfare and the noise and the this and the that, and you just come in and you start working, and you're not promising better, and you're not telling them about what we're going to change and do, and you're not rocking the boat too much. There's a reason why Abo Marcel Koller and these guys stay in the job, as outspoken as he is. Abo Marcel Koller, they don't make that much noise. Ahly is one of the most successful coaches in the league. Ahly's current coach. They're not here. Well, they're not here. They're just here. Come in, surprise them. Be the underdog. Because it's very hard to be top dog. Very, very hard. One of the things I mentioned with Nabi is also that the expectations of your CV, the expectations of what you've done will follow you everywhere you go. Abo Coach Steve Baka, abo Coach Putimo, abo Coach Rivero, Coach Jose Rivero quietly came in. We didn't know anything about him. They were calling him a plumber. You know, Coach Rivero could have not won anything but got to maybe a final. And you would have gone, wow. It's because there's no expectations. But Abo Rulani come with tons of expectations. The last thing I want to speak about is, where do you go from here? If he does come back from Wydad, where does the road take you? How do you justify getting another one of these jobs? Because we know how Africa is. How do you justify making a move into Europe? And one of my fears was that don't follow in the footsteps of Coach Pitso. And I love Coach Pitso, and he did an incredible job with Al Ahly. He's doing an incredible job everywhere. But those footsteps have proven that and maybe what he was also doing was jumping to a place where he was going to be loved. Sometimes love can blind you. You're going to a club that respects you, that knows you, that we're giving you standing ovations when you're the Mamelodi Sundowns coach. Sometimes it can blind you to the work and the job and the how hard that job is going to be, how hard the situation is. And you kind of overestimate what the club is going to give you or how patient the club is going to be. Once you start having meetings with presidents that side, you know that the time is coming. You have to do something drastic now. So where does he go from here? Does he come back to South Africa? Will he be able to jump to a Europe, maybe coaching in a second division somewhere? I mean, Benny is struggling right now. There's a rumor that he's going to take up the Kenyan national team job. Does he do those type of things? Because the other part is that he's still very young. There's still a lot of road ahead of him. Has he prematurely shot himself in the foot and he has to build up again? These are all questions that we're going to have to ask now. But let's see how it's going to pan out. Wishing all the best for Rulani. Hopefully he can turn this around. Hopefully he can. He is one of our brightest coaches. And we need more coaches right now, guys. We don't have a South African coach in the Champions League. We don't. There's no South African coaches in the Champions League currently right now. So we need to take more care about these coaches, but also our coaches. Can you please plot your courses a lot better? But anyway, guys, I don't want to keep you too long. I know everybody's enjoying it festive. Thank you so much for the support you guys have showed me this year. I have to say it as the year is closing. This has been the most incredible year of growth, of people coming in, of the conversations we've had, on nominations. I'm nominated at the TikTok Awards. I've been nominated at the Content Creator Awards, and it's all because of you guys and the support that you guys have showed me this year. I'm just a guy who really loves South African football, and I have this dream of trying to put it onto the map. And this dream stands on the shoulders of everybody that has supported me up to this point. The members, the people who comment, the people who like, the people who share, the people who say nice things, the people who say bad things. It's all been part of this amazing growth. And I promise you that next year, we're going to do things bigger. We're going to do more. We're going to take it to another level. But I can only do that, and I've only been able to do what I'm doing up to this point because of you all. So I wish the most blessings on your families. I wish Your families are blessed, and you guys are blessed as much as you guys have blessed me and my family this year. Thank you guys so much for the support. I'll see you on the next one.